Day 26, Patriarchs, Genesis 49 through 50, Job 41 through 42, Psalm 16. Let's begin. Genesis 49:50. Then Jacob called his sons, and he said to them, Gather together, so that I may announce what will happen to you in the last days. Gather together and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, my firstborn, you are my strength and the beginning of my sorrow, first in gifts, greater in authority. You are being poured out like water, may you not increase. For you climbed onto your father's bed, and you defiled his resting place. The brothers Simeon and Levi, vessels of iniquity waging war. Let not my soul go by their counsel, nor my glory be within their meeting. For in their fury they killed a man, and in their self-will they undermined a wall. Cursed be their fury, because it was obstinate, and their indignation, because it was harsh. I will divide them in Jacob, and I will scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be at the necks of your enemies. The sons of your father will reverence you. Judah is a lion's young. You have gone up to the prey, my son. While resting, you have lain like a lion. And just like a lioness, who would rouse him? The scepter from Judah and the leader from his thigh will not be taken away, until he who will be sent arrives, and he will be the expectation of Gentiles. Tying his young colt to the vineyard, and his donkey, O my son, to the vine, he will wash his robe in wine, and his cloak in the blood of the grape. His eyes are more beautiful than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun will live at the seashore and by the outpost of ships, reaching as far as Sidon. Issachar will be a strong donkey, reclining between the borders. He saw that rest would be good, and that the land was excellent. And so he bent his shoulder to carry, and he became a servant under tribute. Dan will judge his people just like any other tribe in Israel. Let Dan be a snake in the way, a viper in the path, biting the hooves of horses, so that his rider may fall backward. I will wait for your salvation, O Lord. Gad, being girded, will fight before him. And he himself will be girded backward. Asher, his bread will be fat, and he will provide delicacies to the kings. Naphtali is a stag sent forth, offering words of eloquent beauty. Joseph is a growing son and stately to behold, the daughters run back and forth on the wall. But those who held darts, provoked him, and they contend with him, and they envied him. His bow sits in strength, and the bands of his arms and hands have been let loose by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there he went forth as a pastor, the stone of Israel. The God of your father will be your helper, and the Almighty will bless you with the blessings of heaven above, with the blessings of the abyss that lies beneath, with the blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father are strengthened by the blessings of his fathers, until the desire of the hills of eternity shall arrive. May they be at the head of Joseph, and at the summit of the Nazarite, among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning he will eat the prey, and in the evening he will divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. These things their father spoke to them, and he blessed each one with their proper blessings. And he instructed them, saying, I am being gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the double cave, which is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, opposite Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought, along with its field, from Ephron the Hittite, as a possession for burial. There they buried him, with his wife Sarah. And there Isaac was buried with his wife Rebekah. There also Leah lies preserved. And having finished these commands by which he instructed his sons, he drew his feet onto the bed, and he passed away. And he was gathered to his people. Joseph, realizing this, fell upon his father's face, weeping and kissing him. And he instructed his servant physicians to embalm his father with aromatics. And while they were fulfilling his orders, 40 days passed. For this was the method of embalming dead bodies. And Egypt wept for him for 70 days. And when the time for mourning was fulfilled, Joseph spoke to the family of Pharaoh, If I have found favor in your sight, speak to the ears of Pharaoh. For my father made me swear, saying, See, I am dying. You shall bury me in my sepulchre which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Therefore I shall go up and bury my father, and then return. And Pharaoh said to him, Go up and bury your father, just as he made you swear. So as he went up, all the elders of the house of Pharaoh went with him, along with every patriarch in the land of Egypt. And the house of Joseph with his brothers, except their little ones and flocks and also the herds, which they left behind in the land of Goshen. Likewise he had in his company chariots and horsemen. And it became a crowd without restraint. And they arrived at the threshing place of Atad, which is situated beyond the Jordan. There they spent 7 full days celebrating the funeral rites with a great and vehement lamentation. And when the inhabitants of the land of Canaan had seen this, they said, This is a great lamentation for the Egyptians. And for this reason, the name of that place was called the Lamentation of Egypt. And so, the sons of Jacob did just as he had instructed them. And carrying him into the land of Canaan, they buried him in the double cave, which Abraham had bought along with its field, from Ephron the Hittite, as a possession for burial, opposite Mamre. And Joseph returned into Egypt with his brothers and all those of his company, having buried his father. Now that he was dead, his brothers were afraid, and they said to one another, Perhaps now he may remember the injury that he suffered and requite us for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to him, saying, Your father instructed us before he died, that we should say these words to you from him. I beg you to forget the wickedness of your brothers, and the sin and malice that they practiced against you. Likewise, we petition you to release the servants of the God of your father from this iniquity. Hearing this, Joseph wept. And his brothers went to him. And reverencing prostrate on the ground, they said, We are your servants. And he answered them, Do not be afraid. Are we able to resist the will of God? You devised evil against me. But God turned it into good, so that he might exalt me, just as you presently discern, and so that he might bring about the salvation of many peoples. Do not be afraid. I will pasture you and your little ones. And he consoled them. And he spoke mildly and leniently. And he lived in Egypt with all his father's house, and he survived for 110 years. And he saw the sons of Ephraim to the 3rd generation. Likewise the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born unto Joseph's knees. After these things happened, he said to his brothers, God will visit you after my death, and he will make you ascend from this land into the land which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when he had made them swear and had said, God will visit you, carry my bones with you from this place, he died, having completed 110 years of his life. And having been embalmed with aromatics, he was laid to rest in a coffin in Egypt. Job 41:42. I will not rouse him, as the cruel would do, for who is able to withstand my countenance? Who has given to me beforehand, so that I should repay him? All things that are under heaven are mine. I will not spare him, nor his powerful words and counterfeit attempts at supplication. Who can reveal the beauty of his garment? And who can enter the middle of his mouth? Who can open the doors of his face? I gave fear to the circle of his teeth. His body is like shields fused together, like dense scales pressed over one another. One is joined to another, and not even air can pass between them. They adhere to one another, and they hold themselves in place, and will not be separated. His sneezing has the brilliance of fire, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Lamps proceed from his mouth, like torches of fire burning brightly. Smoke passes out of his nostrils, like a pot that is heated and boiling. His breath causes coal to burn, and a flame comes forth from his mouth. Strength dwells in his neck, and destitution goes before his presence. The parts of his body work in harmony together. He will send lightning bolts against him, and they will not be carried to another place. His heart will be as hard as a stone and as dense as a blacksmith's anvil. When he will be raised up, the angels will be afraid, and because they are terrified, they will purify themselves. When a sword catches up with him, it will not be able to settle in, nor a spear, nor a breastplate. For he will consider iron as if it were chaff, and brass as if it were rotten wood. The archer will not cause him to flee, The stones of the sling have been turned into stubble for him. He will treat the hammer as if it were stubble, and he will ridicule those who brandish the spear. The beams of the sun will be under him, and he will dispense gold to them as if it were clay. He will make the depths of the sea boil like a pot, and he will set it to bubble just as ointments do. A path will shine after him. He will esteem the abyss as if it were weakening with age. There is no power on the earth that is being compared to him, who has been made so that he fears no one. He sees every prominent thing. He is king over all the sons of arrogance. Then Job, responding to the Lord, said, I know that you are able to do all things, and that no thoughts are hidden from you. So, who is it that would disguise a lack of knowledge as counsel? Therefore, I have been speaking foolishly about things whose measure exceeds my knowledge. Listen, and I will speak. I will question you, and you may answer me. By paying attention with the ear, I have heard you, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I find myself reprehensible, and I will do penance in embers and ashes. But after the Lord had finished speaking these words to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Themanite, My wrath has been kindled against you, and against your two friends, because you have not been speaking correctly in my eyes, as my servant Job has done. Therefore, have 7 bulls and 7 rams brought to you, and go to my servant Job, and offer these as a holocaust for yourselves. But also, my servant Job will pray for you. I will accept his face, so that foolishness will not be imputed to you. For you have not been speaking correctly about me, as my servant Job has done. So Eliphaz the Themanite, and Baldad the Suhite, and Zophar the Naamathite departed, and they did just as the Lord had spoken to them, and the Lord accepted the face of Job. Likewise, the Lord was moved by the repentance of Job, when he prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave to Job twice as much as he had before. Yet all his brethren came to him, and all his sisters, and everyone who had known him before, and they ate bread with him in his house. They also shook their heads over him and comforted him, because of all the bad things that God had inflicted on him. And each one of them gave him 1 female sheep, and 1 earring of gold. And the Lord blessed the latter end of Job even more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 pairs of oxen, and 1,000 she-donkeys. And he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of one, Daylight, and the name of the second, Cinnamon, and the name of the third, Horn of Cosmetics. And in the whole world, there were not found women so beautiful as the daughters of Job. And so their father gave them an inheritance along with their brothers. But Job lived long after these events, for 140 years, and he saw his children, and his children's children, all the way to the 4th generation, and he died an old man and full of days. Psalm 16. A prayer of David. Lord, listen to my justice, attend to my supplication. Pay attention to my prayer, which is not from deceitful lips. Let my judgment proceed from your presence. Let your eyes behold fairness. You have tested my heart, and visited it by night. You have examined me by fire, and iniquity has not been found in me. Therefore, may my mouth not speak the works of men. I have kept to difficult ways because of the words of your lips. Perfect my steps in your paths, so that my footsteps may not be disturbed. I have cried out because you, O God, have listened to me. Incline your ear to me and heed my words. Make your mercies wonderful, for you save those who hope in you. From those who resist your right hand, preserve me like the pupil of your eye. Protect me under the shadow of your wings. From the face of the impious who have afflicted me. My enemies have surrounded my soul. They have concealed their fatness. Their mouth has been speaking arrogantly. They have cast me out, and now they have surrounded me. They have cast their eyes down to the earth. They have taken me, like a lion ready for the prey, and like a young lion dwelling in hiding. Rise up, O Lord, arrive before him and displace him. Deliver my soul from the impious one, your spear from the enemies of your hand. Lord, divide them from the few of the earth in their life. Their gut has been filled from your hidden stores. They have been filled with sons, and they have bequeathed to their little ones the remainder. But as for me, I will appear before your sight in justice. I will be satisfied when your glory appears.